the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
What exists, reality itself, is gorgeous. It is the plenum, the fullness of total joy. The universe is a celebration. It's a fireworks show to celebrate that existence is. Wowee.
For those of us seeking a life of meaning and purpose, capturing fulfillment in every moment of now, seeking the truths of our reality so we can live this life to its fullest. This is the Live This Life podcast. And I'm your host, Hugh Cummings. I'm here to inspire you to ask yourself the question every day. Are you living? Or are you killing time? What's up, guys? Time to get it growing again. And in today's episode, we are going to dive back into the transformative book, Oneness. In the last reading, we read chapter 7 and 8. So in this one, we're going to do 9 and 10, which synchronistically turned out to be the exact feeling and message that I had after the whole eclipse experience, which this is what happens with this book with me and so many other people. I mean, you can randomly flip open this book to any one of the chapters and it's just its own relevant piece of information. You don't have to read it cover to cover, front to back. And actually the book that a podcast that introduced me to this book, the Positive Head podcast, he jumped all over the place. He had a random number generator. He would read that chapter and then eventually he had to kind of like whittle it down to the ones that were left. And in our reading here, we're going cover to cover, front to back. But if you flip open this book, it just has some relevant stuff that more times than not, I have found it applicable to things that were going on in my life. So just randomly flipping open a chapter and there it is. And the knowledge that's right there in front of me was always so poignant for the moment. And this whole experience was no different. In this chapter, just glancing through them and trying to revisit it before I read it on the podcast, just looking at the titles of chapter, the multiple titles that they have for each chapter, the subjects that they cover. Just chapter 9 was amazing, and I'm like, yeah, it goes to figure that the experience with the eclipse was exactly some of these things that are bubbling up. So. But there's been a lot of people actually been writing in, thanking me for diving into this book and how much they've appreciated it. This book is a huge part of so many different people's lives and a lot of great comments. I've seen quite a few on YouTube. Suzanne says, thank you for sharing this. Your voice is perfect. Thank you very much, Suzanne. Lindsay Bartholomew said, this book has been my Bible for the last 12 years. So much gold packed in this book. And I can't agree with you more, Lindsay, that this book has so much spiritual wisdom, and I have my issues with the Bible just with its multiple edits, and some of the information that was in the original versions of the Gospels and stuff like that is amazing, amazing stuff. And not slighting it at all, but this is another version of a book like that that's been very powerful for me and many other people like yourself. And another person here, Aligning to Bliss, writes, this is amazing that you took this on. I recently finished this book on audio. I listen over and over. Now reading The Journey to Oneness. Thanks for sharing. I look forward to your thoughts on this. And yes, The Journey to Oneness is actually the book that she wrote after Oneness, but it was the story and sort of information of what led her to write the book Oneness. So it was written afterwards, but it was sort of the process of how it led into the book of Oneness. So very interesting. I haven't read it yet, and I actually have never gotten my hands on it. I've always been so much into this one. So at the rate that I'm able to make it through this book on the podcast, it's taken quite a while, but this season's we're definitely going to tear through a majority of it, if not all of it, in this upcoming season. And then hoping to get Rasha on here and have an interview with her, and then maybe we'll potentially dive into it. It depends. We've got some other really amazing heavy hitters that are on tap that we may have approval for to read as our next book on the podcast. So whatever bubbles up in divine timing, in divine alignment, that'll be the next one we read. But yes, if you guys are into this book, definitely go to onenesswebsite.com to get your hands on this book if you want to get a physical copy. And if you want to get the Journey to Oneness and other books and texts and everything that's written by Rasha. She's just an amazing person, just tapped in, tuned in to so many different spiritual aspects and bits of knowledge. So check out the website. Again, that's onenesswebsite.com. You can get your new or nearly new copies, I think is how she phrased it. But head there if you want to get your hands on some of this material. So right now, we're going to dive back into chapters 9 and 10 of Oneness. So as with all the chapters, they are pretty lengthy in title. Chapter 9 is no different. Chapter 9 is titled, The Plate of Life, an Allegory, Confronting Resistance to Change, Coming to Terms with Obsolete Priorities, Recreating Your Life as a Joyous Reflection of Who You Really Are. This is the time to imagine what life might be like if you were able to manifest what you really want. How would you orchestrate your life if there were no limit to what you were able to have or do? If you could start again at the very beginning or anywhere in between, what would your story read? How would your journey end? That's a good place to begin. Working backward now from a vantage point of the end of your life, having created it as perfection, having accomplished all you sought to, having experienced all you hoped to, having tasted all you wished to, having manifested the highest possibility of expression of your own dream of physical reality, where would you be now? If you were taking your final breaths and watching an instant replay of it all in your mind's eye, how would it feel to you? Would there be contentment? Would there be joy in the moments of culmination of your life story? Would there be any reluctance whatsoever to move on? Look at it. This is the time to dream your dream as it can be, for all it can be. What remains to be seen is what of it, from the realm of all possibilities, you will choose to experience. When presented with an enormous table laden with foodstuffs and delectable confections and one average-sized plate in hand, which selections do you put on your plate? All will not fit. And to sample more than a few savory bits would grow to be distasteful. Yet all the choices are right there awaiting you. All potentially have already manifested as possibility. Which then do you choose to experience consciously? Naturally, the question arises, how many plates is one allowed to have? In answer, there is no limit to the number of plates one may take and fill to brimming if so desired. The rule is, only one plate may be taken on each visit to the table, and a fresh plate must be taken should one desire to visit the table again. You're not required to finish everything you have put on your plate. Perhaps in anticipation, you've created a plate laden with fruit. After mouthful of sweet, delectable fruit, the fruit begins to appear less appealing. After a while, one may regret putting so much fruit on the plate and choose not to experience what remains. One would feel in that moment quite satisfied as far as fruit is concerned, yet there would be the same sense that something was left to be desired. Somewhere there might be a craving for spice and an appetite for the adventure of the table. But until the fruit plate was turned in, cleaned of its offerings or not, another fresh plate was not possible. And a bit of time would need to be allowed before one could digest all the fruit and be ready to appreciate the delights of a plate filled with spice. This ritual can be performed endlessly. Any of the infinite number of combinations of possibilities can be placed on a clean plate in the experience of visiting the table, yet eventually one tires of the table. Eventually one has tasted and satisfied oneself with so many variations on so many themes that one does not feel the need to experience the table. One becomes aware that there is not the hunger for the selections on the table that there once was. In fact, one becomes aware that one is able to live quite happily without visiting the table at all. For the fullness of all the experiences at the table leaves one infinitely nourished, and one feels quite content to be still, just to be. That is the stage of beingness that many of you are encountering in these times. Having tasted the indescribable joy of just being, one feels less inclined at a soul level to spend yet another large chunk of time on yet another visit to the table. And every time they say time in this book, it is italicized. For in between visits to the table, there would have been periods of resting and digesting, where varying levels of just being in the stillness, the isness, had been experienced. In fact, there you sit now with quite a full plate, feeling less and less inclined to follow through with mouthful after mouthful of what you once imagined would be enjoyable. Instead, you remember on a level you cannot even identify how absolutely wonderful it was when there was no plate at all and no table. Somewhere within, you are able to recreate the conditions from what another interim state of being. And you choose in isolated moments to take a break from the brimming plate just to be. Eventually it becomes so obvious that the experience of isness is so satisfying that isness becomes one's priority, plate or no plate. When confronted with that realization, it is clear at a soul level that one may be complete with the table. And one understands that it is perfectly wonderful to just be, even though there is technically still a plate in hand. Until one is at that point, however, there is still a spectacular table. And the truth remains that one stands before the table in every given moment, able to create and recreate the variations on the plate at will. One is not, quote, stuck with an unappealing plate of leftovers simply because one has tasted some of the selections on the plate. And one is not required to force oneself to consume what's left on the plate, simply out of habit. The opportunity to transform that picked over plate into one that is covered with fresh, tempting selections is always there. And that possibility is yours to exercise at all times, at will. For the plate is not one conceived in limitation. Its offerings are only as one perceives them to be. And as one rises to the fullness of one's ability to manifest one's reality and to create what one truly wishes to experience, there is no limit to what one plate can offer. The plate of life is a reflection of your choices in any given moment. Whether the plate appears full or appears empty, to others is irrelevant to the way in which it nourishes your state of beingness in any given moment. A pristine empty plate could be perceived by some to be a reflection of deprivation and a cause for concern or compassion. Yet to the one who holds the plate, its fresh emptiness is a reflection of one who has chosen to travel unencumbered. That plate's austere appearance may well be a reflection of an awareness of the riches of unmanifested experience of the world within that others cannot see in physical form. To attain that level of beingness, one's plate, by definition, would have been cleared of superfluous choices. There would have been an awareness in the process that one cannot travel with ease, focused on the metaphysical, while bearing the burden of a heavily laden plate. And radical choices would have been made that would enable that individual to explore the unlimited possibilities of flying to the heights of human experience, without having to be concerned with balancing one. In these times, many sought instinctively to simplify their experience and stand ready to teach others by example to do the same. Still, others who are in the interim stages of transformation wrestle with the logistics of integrating their newfound awareness with commitments that have been made while creating a life of complexity. It is the one who stands on the brink of spiritual breakthrough and have achieved fleetingly a connectedness with multidimensional aspects of themselves, who feel most poignantly in the contradictions posed by bridging two worlds. In the days to come, these ones can anticipate a confrontation with their own inner knowingness regarding the direction in which they perceive their lives to be headed, and many will succumb to their own reluctance to dismantle the entanglements that have defined their existence thus far. We do not wish to imply that it is in any way inferior to have manifested an accumulation of belongings on your journey. These are the trappings of an incarnate experience. Yet it is important that one consider the price one may be paying in terms of self-compromise in order to maintain a lifestyle whose relevance may be obsolete. When the motives for material advantages were based in a mindset of competitiveness, which was a manifestation of ego, the sense of satisfaction that had been anticipated and hoped for may not have been realized. One is left then with the empty evidence of material gain that is devoid of the passion of which one came from. It is that passion that seeks expression, for that is the driving force of creation which powers all life. When the zest for living and expressing and creating is missing from one's day-to-day activities, one has essentially disconnected from one's own divine essence and from the interconnectedness of all life. The key to that connectedness lies not whether or not one has a rich array of selections on one's plate of life, but whether one is able to express and to experience one's joy of living through those choices. Many who read these words have experienced the agonies of realizing that the scenario that they have spent most of their life constructing no longer delivers the satisfaction that had been envisioned. Yet there is so much investment in terms of time, effort, and resources in the maintenance of that lifestyle that the prospect of changing is daunting. When one's deepest needs as a spiritual being are repressed or are sacrificed to the maintenance of a surface lifestyle built on a foundation of material gain, the energy that seeks expression will set out to manifest that change, if those choices are not made consciously. When one is open to the higher energies that are driving all of creation toward oneness, it is not possible to continue to manifest conditions of separation in one's outer world. Should steps not be taken to shift the focus of one's life in such a way that the joy of living is made manifest, that energy of disconnection will set about a chain reaction whereby change is manifested despite one's best efforts to preserve the status quo. It is to be expected that in these times that one's, quote, house of cards comes crashing down quite unexpectedly when one perceives oneself to be, quote, stuck in the stranglehold of obsolete commitments. It is entirely possible to modify such an extreme scenario of energy transformation by tuning in to the relevance of one's life's choices to one's state of beingness and taking action to consciously shift the focus in the early stages of the process. For it will not be possible to avoid the changes that must be made energetically in order to keep pace with your spiritual evolution. You are becoming who you truly are, many of you in spite of yourselves, and despite your reluctance to defy sensus reality and to stand up and be counted. That too will come to pass when the moment is right. The work now at hand is to arrive at that moment. The task before you is the assessment of your circumstances and the modification of any and all aspects of your mode of creative expression so that it becomes a joyous reflection of the higher energies with which you are aligned. It is the nature of the process to bring up for scrutiny the core issues that served as the very foundation of one's lifestyle. Recognition of the rudimentary belief structure and the priorities that underlie your conscious choices is a fundamental part of the restructuring process. Fear of loss of what one perceives oneself to have built is a powerful impetus for the shifting of that energy. For fear of anything whatsoever is a catalyst for the manifestation of that very outcome. In order to redirect the focus of one's intent so that it is aligned with the momentum of change inherent in life itself, it is necessary to be willing to let go of what no longer serves you energetically and to make way for the manifestation of a radical new direction. The belief structure you are setting about to realign is the vehicle that provides the momentum for your transformation in these times. The time is now for your honest scrutiny of those core beliefs to determine whether you are still able to give mental credence to concepts on which you have based your life choices. Chances are, you have gone through the motions of accepting much of what society has ingrained in your consciousness, And unquestioningly, you have emerged from the stupor of your day-to-day existence with an underlying litany that served to reinforce the standard of separation that is the norm in your culture. The values with which you nurture your young are steeped in the very notions of striving and of exceeding the performance of others, which creates the energetic rift that divides you. One being's triumph, when it is experienced at another's well-being, is a recipe for disaster all the way around in these times. The premise that would have the gain of one counterbalanced with loss by another is the very manifestation of duality that must be transcended if the harmony of oneness is to be achieved. For in the circumstances to come, the efforts of all will, by definition, manifest for the good of all. It cannot be otherwise. Those who persist in the myopic, ego-centered focus of the present will fall by the wayside as they encounter and integrate the higher frequencies. The thrust of momentum toward the unification of all consciousness will not touch some and spare others. All will feel and manifest the consequences of aligning with or resisting the powerful energies of change. All will know as they rise to the fullness of their potential as beings or succumb to their stubborn refusal to acknowledge their connectedness, that the force they have encountered is undeniable. Some will call it God and will open with the fullness of their essence to the opportunity to integrate and become one with all that is. And some will grumble and curse their deteriorated circumstances and blame others for their plight. As the schism widens between those living in alignment and those living in separation from the energy of oneness, it will not be possible to maintain a position of compromise. Ultimately, the choice must be made to respond to the energy that reaches out to include you in its loving embrace. Recognizing that invitation within the depths of one's heart is the beginning of the process. And as the smile of inner recognition spreads across your face, you know, without knowing how, that a passionate, never-ending journey has begun. So that's the end of chapter 9. Very short and sweet. And this one was powerful for me because it talked so much about the transformation process that many of you guys have heard me talk about. That happened to me in 2017, which was 7 years ago, and it was the year of the last total eclipse that we had here in the United States. And I just remember that time frame being so chaotic, and I didn't know who I was, and I didn't know really what I wanted to be. I just knew that I didn't want to be what I already had been. And that process isn't a fast one, as much as all of us want it to be. We think that we want out of this certain situation, but we don't exactly paint a clear picture of what we want our situation to look like. And there is so much that has to happen between this long-term ingrained life that is chiseled into our consciousness, whether it's the ego, whether it's just hardwired cultural programming, just so much stuff, the nature, the nurture, so many things have to change for our life to go from point A to point B, especially if it's a major drastic change. And that's what I was expecting. And most of what was talked about in this chapter was exactly what I was going through. And sitting there at the eclipse and watching it happen now in 2024, just thinking of what the process has been and how much growth has happened and all of the things that have transpired in those 7 years, it was just an amazing growth pattern to see when you can actually look back at it like it is a book and sort of just read page by page of exactly how it transpired just by looking at what has happened over different time periods within that specific time period. And I think that's spiritually what I actually got out of the eclipse. I think it was different for everybody. But I think my own personal experience was pretty much exactly what this previous chapter just described. And it can take some time, and we have to clear our plate to go back to get some more. And it was quite the process in the 7 years. The early part of the 7 years was a major part of me clearing that plate and moving forward. just being able to taste so many of the other different things and the opportunities and the great things that have transpired after cleaning that plate and letting some of those things go, and the ego, the all the trappings of everything that came from a lifestyle that I had previously. It was quite the process, but cleaning that plate allowed for so much more. And in that process as well, I found less of this dire need to have this thing and have to have that thing. I've always dreamed of having a house at Cape Cod, and it was just literally almost like an obsession at a certain point. Now, obviously, yes, that would be a great thing. It's not my biggest driver. It's not my hugest goal. Definitely, if there was just stuff on my list that I wanted the most of, that is the thing I do want to manifest. But I don't obsess about it like I used to. And I think just exactly what this process talked about in this chapter, that the lust, I guess they don't use that word, but I guess the lust for wanting to fill that plate even more, to go up for some sort of new experience, for some sort of new flavor different than the one that you had already had plates full of, it starts to dissipate. Like, yes, okay, going up for this thing would be nice, but you don't have this, like, I've got to hurry up and finish this because I want to go and get this other thing. And I don't know, it was a process for me. And like I said, the reflection process on the entire thing with the eclipse was a powerful one. So this chapter definitely outlined a lot of the things that it was an amazing thing to read this, because it was a lot of everything I've been processing for the past couple of weeks since that experience. So this podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. As many of you know, mental health is something that I take very seriously. That's why I've chosen to partner the podcast with BetterHelp. Their licensed therapists can help you identify what areas of your life you're having difficulty with and help you ride the ups and downs of life. I've personally used BetterHelp, and I have to say, for somebody who's experienced with the process of seeing therapists, BetterHelp's resources are beyond amazing. You can choose from their network of over 30,000 licensed professionals to find one that you vibe with. Want a male, female, specific ethnicity, certain religious background? BetterHelp lets you narrow it down that specifically so you can find the perfect therapist for your care. And you can easily change therapists at any time, which I have no intention of doing because my therapist, Bruce, is the man. I have amazing conversations with him. I leave our sessions not only feeling like I've taken a weight off my shoulders, but I leave the sessions with objectives to accomplish for the next appointment. You can choose video, audio, or chat sessions that all go right through the app, as well as journal entries that you can send right to your therapist so they know ahead of time what you might want to work on. They offer live webinars on a range of subjects, all of which adds to the toolbox for your mental well-being. Jump on the solution that millions are turning to. Visit betterhelp.com/live this life to get started and get 10% off your first month of therapy. That's betterhelp.com/live this life. Chapter 10. This one is called The Ebb and Flow of the Tides of Consciousness, the Power of Non-Attachment to Outcome, Timing the Completion of Core Issues, Riding the Energies as a Tool for Manifestation and Karmic Resolution. The clarity you have attained thus far on your journey has served to bring you to this moment, here at this crossroads in time and space that you regarded as, quote, today. The consciousness of humanity stands poised in an in-breath of life, awaiting the inevitable out-breath to follow. And just as the rhythm of the breath is anticipated and experienced in harmony with the rest of your life functions as a fact of your physical existence, so too is the rhythm of your awareness, the ebb and flow of the tides of your emerging consciousness, in harmony with the in-breath and the out-breath of creation. The moments of clarity intensify and then wane over and over again. The experiences of a spark of crystalline awareness, and in that exquisite moment is convinced that clarity is there to stay. Yet, as it reaches to hold onto it, the illumination slips elusively past, and one is left to wonder whether one has actually awakened or still wandered to the back roads of the dream. In all likelihood, as the process of transformation intensifies, one is experiencing both states of being simultaneously. The process of awakening is not one in which a definitive threshold is crossed and one is then quote, enlightened, transformed, or ascended. There is much backsliding to be experienced on this journey, and it is not unlikely to find yourself quite suddenly back at the beginning in your own mind's eye, when you were just patting yourself on the back for having scaled some daunting precipice, thinking the summit was at long last in view. That is very much the nature of the experience. Your own preoccupation with the concept of completion will keep that state of attainment ever elusive. Spiritual growth is not focused on a destination, but rather on the journey itself. The realization of oneness, which is the culmination of the process, is a state of beingness that you will embrace over and over again. And in the moments when that blessed state has slipped through your fingers yet again, know that you have not lost it, but rather have afforded yourself yet another opportunity to find it within the core of your own being. When you cease looking for the sense of connectedness and cease seeking answers outside of your own inner source, the interim periods of separation, when your gravest doubts resurface, become fewer and farther between. Ultimately, you embody that knowingness, for you are oneness in essence, and you have been all along. When you make the transition from believing to knowing that basic truth, you are on your way to stabilizing the process of embodying that truth, such that you are fully aware of your interconnectedness with all life at all times. Know that the truth you seek is within you. The answers are there before the question has been fully formulated. You have manifested everything needed to have everything your heart desires right now. And there is absolutely nothing standing between you and the realization of your deepest longing to reunite in oneness with all creation. For you are already there. Everything that is to happen has already happened, and is and continues to be eternally. When your perception of the illusion of time-space, when your perception of the illusion of time-space, as reality, is in harmony energetically with the momentum of the eternal now, you experience what is. When the energies wane, you experience the illusion once more of the elusive state of enlightenment just out of reach. Just like the rhythms of the tides, this state of awareness washes up on the shores of your consciousness, nudging you into recognition of the knowingness harbored deep within. This knowingness does not wane with the rhythms of the transformation process, but is there within the depths of your being eternally. When the difference in these states of being has been experienced sufficiently to notice an emerging pattern, you are ready to begin to unravel the threads of the system of belief that reinforce the illusion and keep it rooted there. When you've had the opportunity to taste the experience of divine connectedness to the extent that is clearly identifiable and not perceived as a random occurrence, you are ready to embrace the process of peeling back the layers of limitation that reinforce the elusiveness of that experience. It is in the depths of that process that most who are knowingly in the throes of transformation find themselves. One begins to draw a correlation between the moments of exquisite connectedness and the ease with which the events of one's life fall into place. Then, just as suddenly, one is blocked and stymied at every turn. One's will is thwarted, and it appears that despite one's best efforts, nothing seems to go right. These are the classic signs of the advanced stages of the journey. These are the symptoms of a state of beingness in which one's attunement to the higher frequencies is stabilizing. And as one shifts one's focus from the attachments that keep one tied to material priorities out of fear of loss, and embrace the interconnectedness and the sense of trust that transcends those concerns, one is able to let go. It is in letting go of the limitations of the one that the limitlessness of the other may be realized. For those who are attempting to juggle both states of being as a way of hedging one's bets, the process takes longer. For those able to let go totally in recognition of a connectedness that is undeniable, the shift can be instantaneous. Once that shift has been made and one is clear as to how reality can be choreographed vibrationally, the foundations for transcending material limitations can be established. There's no question. When one is at the stage of awareness that there is a correlation between the inception of thought and the realization of experience, and one becomes focused on the subtleties of harmonizing one's personal will with the rhythm of creation. When one's energies are attuned to the higher resonance, one is able to sense with ease as the direction in which the current is now moving, and one is able to be carried by the momentum of that energy and manifest outcomes that are harmonious. When one attempts to defy a situation by meeting adversity head on, one disrupts the momentum and manifests results that are less desirable. Conflict can be circumvented simply by allowing it to pass without becoming ensnared by its grasp. One learns that the inclination to force one's personal will, when resistance is being encountered, can only result in an energetic nosedive in the manifestation of circumstances calculated to create frustration. And one becomes less invested in forcing a result and more inclined to allow for the harmonization of one's own energies with the tides of creation to manifest the desired outcome. Riding the wave of the energies is a skill that you will perfect as part of the process. Recognizing when you are in a state of connectedness is key to the timing of your responses to the circumstances as they present themselves to you. When your energies are at a low ebb and you are experiencing resistance, it is a time to pull inward and not escalate adversity by directly confronting those circumstances. When you're floating upon an energy wave that is an upsurge, this would be the time to initiate action. In so doing, one sets one's desired result adrift in the current of the energies and allows that momentum to carry one's heart desire into manifestation. Non-attachment to outcome further enhances one's ability to realize an elevated result. When one's approach to living is one of trusting that the highest possible outcome will be forthcoming, that is one's experience of life. By resisting the inclination to allow fear-based conditioning to direct your choices, you reinforce your experience of riding the current in harmony. Releasing the need to appear in control in one's own eyes and in the eyes of others is key to one's ability to progress through this stage of the transformation process. For there is no room for judgment here. Your own expectations with regard to your performance can severely restrict the pace at which you're able to progress through this phase and move on. An experience of adversity or a surge of intense emotion should not be cause for drawing the conclusion for one is off track. Allowing the energy to pass through one's field and permitting the manifestations that are triggered to be unimpeded accelerates the process of release. Attachment to the expectation of an enlightened response from oneself to all circumstances restricts the possibility that a release of negative energy charge may be achieved. When one constricts one's natural response mechanisms by filtering one's emotional reactions with the mind, one inhibits the potential benefits in the releasing of energy charges still lingering around certain life issues. Permitting oneself the latitude to respond with authenticity serves to enhance one's ability to bring those issues to completion. Timing one's response to these highly charged emotional triggers enables one to direct the release without restricting it, and thereby bringing to fruition the highest possible outcome. Similarly, the tendency to avoid certain situations and individuals as a way of circumventing conflict does not automatically guarantee one's unimpeded vibrational ascent. Ultimately, one's, quote, buttons must be pushed and the corresponding energy charge released if one is to realize one's highest potential as a transcendent being in physical form. An energy charge that is allowed to remain will continue to draw to it repeated opportunities for release. Avoidance of the underlying issues and the maintenance of a calm veneer does not enhance one's progress. Quite the contrary. Ideally, one is able to choose one's moment to work through core issues with key players in one's life drama. In so doing, one is able to confront the issues at hand directly, while coming from a position of enhanced energy and thereby making the highest possible vibrational contribution to the interchange. Karmic resolution of issues with key players in your life drama may be brought to completion under ideal circumstances and the optimum outcome achieved when one is consciously aware of the potential in riding the waves of accelerating vibrations. By monitoring one's own vibrational state of being before responding to an invitation to engage in conflict or conflict resolution, one is able to navigate through choppy waters participated by untold lifetimes of karmic history and bring all concerned safely to shore. Awareness of these choices is the key to all you would accomplish in this painstaking process. Tuning into the ebb and flow of your own energies enables you to choose your moment and release the residual sparks of emotion in a way that is painless for all concerned. When the focus of your consciousness, when your conscious awareness is directed toward that end, you are able to maintain the momentum of vibrational acceleration while releasing the self-limiting energy charges that are holding you back. By riding the wave of energies with a clear and heart-centered focus, you become a lamplight to others who are caught in the tides of energy acceleration and are riding out the stormy seas of their own personal histories. As you transcend the circumstances of your drama and come to embody the energy of unity, your attunement to the higher frequencies guides you in guiding others who may be floundering by your side. Simply by being who you are, where you are in this moment in time, and by sharing your truth and your own process honestly, you help the others with whom you share your journey. There's no need to whitewash your process for the benefit of others who may be inclined to be in judgment. There's no need to apologize for who you are and for the magnificence of your personal journey to oneness. By being totally authentic in your humanness, your human frailties, as well as your strengths, your perceived shortcomings, as well as your triumphs, your darkest hours, as well as your shining moments, you set the stage for becoming the shining example of triumph over adversity with grace that you truly are. No one emerges from the journey of transformation without having weathered a storm or two and without being washed up on the shore, gasping for breath now and then. That is the nature of the experience. It is foolhardily to think that you are experienced to skim the surface of your journey untouched and to emerge unscathed. That is not the way it works when it works. For to realize the full potential of this journey, it is necessary that you be willing to immerse yourself in the treacherous waters of change, knowing that the ability to swim like a champion under all possible conditions is within you. Let there be no doubt in this, no fear, no regret. The destination is predetermined, and your course is set. You will arrive at that destination right on schedule. It cannot be otherwise. What is open is what you choose to create and to experience along the way. There is no point in deluding yourself into believing that you are not ready. For it is far too late to wonder if it is safe to put your toe in the water of transformation when you're already far from shore. And that is the end of chapter 10. And this one is just so very poignant and so true as well. It's just for anybody who's already starting to go through some of these experiences like this talks about of your life completely shifting and processes changing pretty much everything about you and your life, you start to realize that your ability to make it through, no matter whether it seems like you're unscathed or not, your ability to come out the other side and still continue on is something in and of itself that is an admirable trait. A lot of people, when they're in the midst of some of their darkest times, the first time around, it's a very scary experience. That dark night of the soul that people will go through, and many people go through many. I believe I've already gone through 3 significant ones that have changed me significantly. When people go for the first one, though, it is a wild ride and it's extremely scary. And when you start to see other people who've made it through it, you have somebody to confide in and ask, how did you make it through some of these tough times? What tools did you use? But then also knowing that that process has an outcome, that something is likely going to come out of it. That is what I think is the ultimate catalyst that will help shine that light in those darkest times. Like this thing that I'm going through, whether it's the loss of a person or something else, it won't be easy, and it may be something that you never actually get over it. But in the end, it ends up leading you to being a completely different person who has some sort of strength in your life that you wouldn't have had otherwise. And whether or not you wanted it, the whole saying of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It is true. And a lot of people gone through a lot of loss. And I think this is a very poignant chapter for a lot of people, especially at the last few years, who've had a lot of transformations and the world is shattered around them, whether it's the loss of people, the loss of ideologies, the world just completely changing around them as they realize things are not as we've been told they are, and different ideals sort of fall to the wayside. It can leave you in sort of an existential crisis, and that can lead people to the beginnings of that dark night of the soul. And having people to confide in who've been through it, who are the examples of being triumphant, those are the people to turn to and to continue to be inspired by. And I'm honored. I mean, I've definitely been nowhere near through some of the really rough times that some of my mentors and people that I've looked up to have been through, but that doesn't diminish my own triumphs and trials and everything. And I'm just honored that people will look at my experience and see it in the way that I look at others who have been through so much and admire them and seek their guidance on how they made it through those tough times. And having the ability to be in that role for some people, no matter how small or big it might be, it is a huge responsibility and it is a great honor. So I do appreciate the place that I'm in the transformation process of where I am. And I know there will be tough times to come, and whenever they come, having the mindset of this is something that is coming in here for me, and as long as I make it through it, it may not be pleasant. It may be one of the worst experiences ever. It's something that was destined to create something else, whatever that happens to be. Life will unfold and tell you what that is eventually. So, but yes, this book is just full of amazing stuff. I know that quite a few people who've written to me, just even outside of like the YouTube comments, I've gotten some emails on it as well. So thank you all. If there are comments you want to leave, the question and answer section at the show on the bottom of the show notes for this episode, if you're listening to this on a podcast, there will be a question and answer section on the bottom of that. So if you have thoughts, you can leave it in that particular link. If you're listening to this on YouTube, then you can leave in the comment section. I will read some of those comments on the air, and you can always send me a direct message to connect@livethislife.org. If you have questions about something you've read in the book or something that you want emphasized or anything about this book or anything else you hear on the podcast. But I definitely encourage you to start some dialogue with this and share this book with people who you think this might be valuable with. And point them toward the podcast. If they can't afford the book, the podcast is free, so they can listen to me read this book. And it's always great to have a physical copy of it and even read along. I've always felt that was something so powerful when I first discovered this book and listened to it on another podcast. Reading along and hearing somebody else read it, just for some reason it weighed on me so much more. So head on to the ONENESSwebsite.com to get your copy of it. There's so many opportunities to learn within this book and so many other things that Rasha was graceful enough to share with this world. So use these opportunities with the great teachers and learn what you possibly can from every one of these experiences. So until next time, get the book Oneness so you can read along in the future episodes, and we will see you next time. If you are a conscious thought leader, an expert on inspiration, or have your own amazing story to tell about how you've manifested your best life, we want you on the show. You can connect with us by writing to connect@livethislife.org. That's CONNECT@livethislife.org. Or you can reach out to us through the show's Calendly page at calendly.com/livethislife. And be sure to check out everything going on with the podcast at livethislife.org.